Come with me in the twilight of the summer night for a while. Tell me of a story never ever told in the past. Take me back to the land where my yearnings were born. The key to open the door is in your hand. Now fly me there. Fanatics find their heaven in never-ending storming winds. Auguries of destruction be a lullaby for rebirth. Consolations be there in my dreamland to come. The key to open the door is in your hand. Now take me there. I believe in fantasies invisible to me. In the land of misery, I'm searching for the sign to the door of mystery. I'm wandering down and searching down the secret sun. Come with me in the twilight of a summer night for a while. Tell me of a story never ever told in the past. Take me back to the land where my yearnings were born. The key to open the door is in your hands. Now take me there to the land of twilight. Hey everyone, my name is Jacob, but the trolls, they call me Snowflake. Sorry for the terrible singing there. I just couldn't resist. And just, yeah, I've been planning on doing that song, and yeah, I really can't justify it. I just had to do it. There was something in me that just told me I had to do it. So, all in all, actually thought it came out all right. I mean, probably came out the best it probably could have ever come out with how bad my voice is. But yeah. So hopefully I haven't scared too many of you off with my terrible singing. But why I chose that song was because that song is from one of my favorite animes of all time, and an anime that I feel has really been kind of overlooked at large by a lot of the anime community. And it's an anime that I really want to talk about because I think that it has a really great kind of story to tell, and maybe is more relevant than it was when it first came out. Is an anime that's very close to my heart. That was one of the very first I ever watched, and that anime is called Dot Hack Sign. Now, the Dot Hack franchise is kind of a bit of a long-running one. It's still kind of going up to this day, sort of. There haven't been any more animes very recently. I think the last movie they released, I think, was maybe like 2014, I think. Apparently they have a new game in the works, but apparently it's supposed to come out in like 2025, and I'm like, okay, wow. So, Dot Hack Sign I think is a really interesting anime. It's kind of, if you watch Sword Art Online, like I'm sure a lot of people are, it's kind of, a lot of people have called it the grandfather, or like the progenitor of Sword Art Online. And, I haven't watched Sword Art Online a lot, but, I think that I can definitely see the similarities in it. Person gets trapped in a game, that sort of thing. Though I think that Dot Hack Sign does it a little bit differently. How I came to kind of be associated with this anime was, I think it was back in elementary school, I think. Back in late elementary school, there's a channel up here in Canada called YTV. It's basically kind of, I think, like our version of Cartoon Network. There's like a lot of cartoons, and it's mostly like for kids and stuff. But when I was in my late, I think like grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8 or something, there was a programming block called, I think it was called Biotics or Bionics. I can't remember which it was. But they would show a lot of animes during that time. They would show Bleach, Naruto, Inuyasha, and that's how I kind of started to really watch anime like sincerely. And one of the ones that they had, I think it was in the very beginning, was Dot Hack Sign. Now, it was the very, very last anime in the block, like the very, very last one. And like at the time, I was supposed to go to bed at like, I remember like having to go to bed at like 9 or 10 o'clock and having to like force myself, like staying up to try and watch Dot Hack Sign, and it kind of being like the thing that I would stay up to watch this kind of strange anime that was kind of not like everything else. And I really enjoyed it when I was a kid, and I came back to it as an adult. Now, ever since graduating university, I've gotten back into watching anime again and really kind of sort of working to kind of build up my library of favorite animes and stuff. And so one of the very first ones I watched when I sort of started on this kick was Dot Hack Sign. I rewatched it and I loved it even more than I did when I was a kid. And so now I kind of want to share all of those thoughts and observations with all of you. And hopefully you'll like it, and hopefully you'll go see it. Warning, this will contain overall minor spoilers. I'll talk about some characters, some personalities, and stuff like that. There will be heavier spoilers, but I will do my best to identify when those spoilers are, and I will put their timestamps down in the show notes, so that way you can skip them if you want. I'm not too, fussed about spoilers, so it really doesn't matter to me, but if it matters to you, then I'll do my best to accommodate you, Dot Hack Sign really does seem to be, from what I've been able to read and research about it, it really does seem to be somewhat of a polarizing anime. Some people absolutely love it, like me, while other people really seem to hate it. And from my observation anyway, it seems to be that the reason why they don't like it is because they seem to think that it's boring. Which I guess is maybe, if you're looking for something more action-packed, then yeah, I can understand why you would think that this anime is boring. And I've seen a lot of people who come in from Sword Art Online and become really disappointed by it because, of course, Sword Art Online is more of an action anime, whereas Dot Hack Sign is really not at all. There's almost no violence in this anime whatsoever. There's almost no fight, no combat, or anything like that. This is an anime that has a much stronger focus on the characters especially, but also on this kind of mystery that it builds around the video game that's centered around, and about the motivations of the characters and how they react to the things that they're experiencing and stuff. And that's one of the things I love about it. I love character-driven stories and stuff, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But to start off, I think we better have a little bit of background on the anime. And now, first of all, I mostly don't care about productions of anime. That's why I'm really terrible at like critiquing like animation, like the quality of animation and stuff, because honestly, I really don't care. That's really not my jam. My jam is much more around the story and around the themes and stuff like that. So the background we're going to have is, there's kind of a bit of a background to the series and kind of a bit of sort of preamble that we need to get through for you to kind of understand what I'm going to be talking about. So the series, this was created, I think, in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, around that point. And the show itself is set in the year 2009, which was in the future when the anime was being made and when I was first watching it. So it's now in the past now, but yeah, it was set in the year 2009 in the aftermath of a massive internet-wide shutdown caused by a virus called Pluto's Kiss. This caused massive amounts of chaos, like traffic signals not working, planes colliding in midair, and even the US nuclear missiles almost being launched. And it was this massive thing that basically devastated the whole internet. But in the aftermath of that, cyberspace has become much more restricted and much more confined, with only one operating system being immune to the Pluto's Kiss virus, and that is called Ultimate OS. After the networks sort of start to recover and the internet sort of starts to come back online again, the very first online computer game after Pluto's Kiss is developed for Ultimate OS called The World. Now, The World, its look is very much inspired by like classic fantasy, Celtic art, and it's very, very much inspired by early 2000s MMORPGs like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy, with a central hub called Root Town, with shops, a save point, and what's called Chaos Gate, which is basically kind of like a portal that takes you to the different servers, which are things like battlefields, deserts. You have mountains floating in the sky. You have dark dungeons, castles, all that sort of stuff. And, in the game, you choose several different classes of character. You have, your heavy blades and blade masters, which are basically kind of your attack-focused characters who wield swords. You have long arms, who are the spear users. You have heavy axe users, twin blades, who are kind of like your thieves, sort of. And you have your wave masters, who are kind of like your magic users, etc., etc. There are several other classes like that too. But the world, its kind of one defining characteristic is that is its extreme player freedom. Players are free to do whatever they want within the game. If you want to dungeon crawl and fight monsters in order to level up and basically kind of be like a traditional dungeon crawler, you can do that. If you want to settle down and raise a chibi-style donkey hippo called a grunty, you can totally do that too. If you want to just walk around and enjoy the scenery, you can do that. If you even want to set up a shop and act as a merchant in the game, because there are basically no NPCs in this game. Every position is filled by a character, by an actual person. You can be a merchant if you want to. You can be one of those people. If you want to go around and kill other players in what is known as PKing, you can do that even though it is one of the things in the game that is very strongly discouraged. It doesn't stop you from doing it, but it's discouraged. You can even uphold the laws and the rules of the game itself and act as an intermediary between the players and the system administrators, joining a group known as the Crimson Knights. And you're free to do that as well. Now, the anime itself takes place almost exclusively within the world, the game, with the occasional snapshot of events outside the game. But they do this kind of very interesting style where the real world, like the game world, is portrayed in full color. You can hear all of the characters talking, and they interact basically like typical characters in any piece of media. But when you go to the real world, it's all washed out. It's very monochromatic. There's no dialogue whatsoever. It's only ever flashed up on the screen in very hard to decipher text. And it's got this kind of like static, like television static over top of it and stuff. And so it's really, really interesting, and it has a very kind of foreboding kind of atmosphere, which I think works towards building the suspense and building the mystery that the anime is trying to build. And the story itself centers around a character known as Tsukasa, who is a wave master who he's very cynical, he's very introverted, and sometimes even actively unfriendly. But the strange thing about Tsukasa is that he seems to be able to move between servers without the use of the Chaos Gates. And he's also very quickly revealed to have been continually logged into the world for days on end. And I don't mean like logged in like for 18 hours and then slept 6 hours and then got back on the game again. I mean like they eventually, like the other characters in the game eventually check the logs and eventually discover that Tsukasa has been continuously logged on for days, like literally has not stopped playing at any point for like 5 days. And so that kind of makes him very interesting to a number of different characters, which form the central cast of the anime. Now, he quickly meets two of his main kind of friends in the world. There's Mimiru, who is a very energetic, very upbeat, very optimistic, kind of peppy, maybe a little bit scatterbrained, maybe a little bit kind of doesn't look before she leaps kind of a person, but definitely not afraid to call it as she sees it and to speak her mind when she feels that she has to. And along with another character, Bear, who is a bit of an older player. He's very cool, he's very calm, he's always looking to help out newbies. He loves nothing more than to help out people who don't really seem to know what they're doing in the game and to give them kind of pointers. Also, though, has a tendency to say quotes and talk about very, very obscure philosophical thinkers and to quote from very, very obscure esoteric books and stuff. But Tsukasa also winds up as well running afoul of another player known as Subaru and the group that she kind of organizes known as the Crimson Knights, who are players who work to keep the game fair for everyone, who reports anyone who breaks the rules through, or abuse their freedom through things like PKing, or hackers and stuff, and report them to the system administrators. They can't, of course, actually do anything about it because they're just players in the game, but they'll report you to the system administrators, who will then take action if they feel they have to. And there's a couple other characters as well. There's the aloof BT, who is a wave master, similar to Tsukasa, and she maybe comes off, I think, as a bit kind of an ice queen. Doesn't really talk a lot, doesn't really interact, doesn't really kind of do a lot of the normal stuff in the game. She's always just kind of there. She kind of pops in and out to talk with the other characters and stuff. But that doesn't mean that she's badly written. That's kind of the point of her character. I'll get into that a little bit later. There's Krim, who's an ally of Subaru, who helped to found the Crimson Knights, but who's been away from the game for a while. And there's Sora, who is a notorious PKer, who especially likes to target female players, asking for their member addresses, their email addresses within the game, in exchange for not PKing them. And eventually the cast settles in on a legend that exists within the world amongst the players about an item known as the Key of the Twilight, which is said to be able to override the rules of the game itself, most of them thinking that this must have something to do with Tsukasa, while Bear, Mimiru, and Subaru all think that this might be the only way that they have in order to actually free Tsukasa from the game. And the plot, sort of unfolds from that point onwards. And, kind of one of the big themes in the anime is about kind of who these people kind of really are, both in the game and outside of the game. Some of them are very, very different people than who they portray themselves to be in the game. Some of them are exactly who they portray themselves to be in the game. And it's all kind of about how that kind of dynamic of the real world versus the online world and how those two kind of affect and interact with one another. Now, one other criticism that people often have of the anime is that the plot is sometimes a bit hard to follow, especially around the secrets around the search for the Key of the Twilight and stuff. And so, and I found it was a little bit kind of esoteric the first time I watched it. That was until I found out the backstory behind it all. So this is going to be the main spoiler, I think, in this review. So if you absolutely don't want to go in to spoilers, if you don't want to know anything about the backstory of the world and its creation, then skip to the timestamp that I'll put in the show notes down below. Hopefully you won't miss it too much, but I feel like giving this kind of explanation as to the creation of the world and maybe kind of spoiling a bit of the mystery of the world, I think it helps you understand the story and understand the things that happen in the anime, whereas they may not be fully explained or anything like that. And like when I found out about this, I saw myself going back, I was like, oh, all of that makes sense now. And so I'm going to tell you guys that now, for those who are interested. For those who aren't, skip to the timestamp afterwards, and we will continue on with the review. There'll still be minor spoilers after that, but again, this is a review. You sort of can't do it without spoilers. But so yeah. The origin of the world starts with a man named Harold Horowitz, who is the creator of the world, the programmer of the world. Now, he was in love with a poet named Emma Wayland, whose greatest, most famous work is called The Epitaph of the Twilight, which is an epic poem about a race of beings known as sprites, and these are beings which cast no shadow, being devoured by an evil called the Cursed Wave, and three beings who unite the armies of light and dark to defeat the Cursed Wave. However, most of the poem, which was posted online on Emma Wayland's site, was lost during Pluto's kiss. Only fragments of it now remain. And more unfortunately, Emma herself died in a car accident before Harold was able to tell her how he felt. And he created the world using the epitaph as an inspiration in an eternal tribute to Emma. Now, along with the world, Harold also created an AI within the world called Aura, who he intended to become the ultimate and most powerful AI ever created, by using the game kind of as a virtual womb for her, and feeding her emotional data collected from all of the players in the game, intending her to become the daughter that he and Emma would never have. He also created a second AI, a much more simpler AI, known as Morgana Mode Gone, or Morgana for short, who was omnipresent within the world, and who would make sure that the game was running smoothly and that data was being collected, basically kind of working like a nursemaid to Aura, and who Aura, once she awakened, would merge with and become kind of the all-powerful, the all-omnipresent goddess of the world and of the internet at large. However, Morgana eventually realized that once Aura awakened, she would cease to exist. She would no longer have an individual existence. And so Morgana winds up becoming the antagonist of the series because she seeks now to stall Aura's development indefinitely so that Morgana will remain the god of the world forever, and she will remain in power forever. Harold eventually places his mind into the world and leaves his physical body behind, but Morgana shatters his consciousness before he can do anything, leaving him as the broken man, which the characters will later find in the series before he is erased by Morgana. And the reason why Morgana traps Tsukasa in the world is that Tsukasa endured prolonged abuse at the hands of their father and is sort of full of negative emotions. So the reason why Tsukasa is in the world is to kind of escape from the situation. And the reason why Tsukasa acts the way he does is because his player is very, very full of negative emotions and kind of is very traumatized by it all. And so by trapping Tsukasa within the world and placing Tsukasa close to Aura, Morgana hopes that all of the negative emotions that Tsukasa feeds into Aura will stunt her growth permanently and leave her in an incompleted state. So, spoilers are over now. Hi, everyone who decided to forego spoilers. Welcome back. And that's kind of, I think, all the preamble we kind of really need for this series before we can really kind of dive into it. One big thing that a lot of people really talk about when it comes to Dot Hack Sign is the soundtrack. Many people have said that Dot Hack Sign has the most beautiful soundtrack of any anime. And while maybe it's a little bit hyperbolic, maybe just a touch, it's definitely a contender though. It has just the most beautiful, atmospheric, ethereal soundtrack. Very heavily inspired by Celtic music. Very heavy use of violin and piano and string and wind instruments. And oh, it's so beautiful. This was the anime that introduced me to the musical goddess that is Yuki Kajiura. If you don't know who she is, like I said, she is the goddess of anime soundtracks. She, is so prolific. She has done so much work on so many animes, and her work is always beautiful. You may have also seen her. She also has managed several bands as well. If you've ever heard a song from Califina, she manages the band and writes their music. The band who did the opening and ending themes for this show and for Gundam Seed, the ending for Gundam Seed, Seesaw, was another band that she managed as well. I actually think that that's actually her performance name, actually, is like the band that she plays with is Seesaw. But yeah, like it just is so beautiful. And the song that I sang at the beginning of the show, Key of the Twilight, is another song that comes from the OST of this anime. And just, I love like just every song on this soundtrack. If you can find it online, it's on YouTube. I can probably even send you a link if you really, really want them. If you want like the links to it, I can like drop me a line in the comments and I'll send you links to some of my favorite songs. But yeah, like it does such a beautiful job of kind of making the world kind of this very ethereal kind of place. You get this sense with the world that it's a very magical place, of course, being inspired very much by high fantasy, classical fantasy, and stuff like that. Like the music really does a great job of portraying kind of the space of the world, the openness of it, being an open world game, which again was very rare at the time the anime was being made. And the other really great thing that the soundtrack does is that it really pushes forward, I think, the emotions of the characters. Like the songs are very, very well tailored to what's going on in that scene. So, if you have like kind of a song where like at points in the anime characters are just sitting around and just talking, and those are kind of really beautiful moments because you just have the beautiful music in the background and they're like being really heartfelt and vulnerable and stuff, and it's just so sweet and wonderful and I love it. But then like there are also moments too where like they're moving into action, and so the soundtrack reflects that. You especially see it, I think, with one particular song called Aura, or Aura's theme. And you get this a lot when kind of something sad is kind of going on or something kind of mysterious. The transformation that the song goes through, like nothing in the song changes at all. The song is the same every single time you hear it, but the context of it changes. Like at first, it's kind of just a very sad, maybe a bit strange, but just overall a very kind of sad, melancholic song. That's kind of talking about this person who's all on their own, who's lost, who doesn't really know where to go and stuff. But like as like the series moves on and as you come to the big climax and as more of the stuff around the villain of the show and around the conflicts of the show come to fruition, and as you get down to the very end of it, when that song starts to come in, it becomes that oh shit moment. Like the minute you hear that song, you know that something bad is happening. You know that something is going to happen and it's not going to be good. And like it's amazing just how much that song changes and transforms like just through the context that it's presented in. And it's really, really good. I still love most of the song. I have most of the soundtrack on my computer and I listen to it all the time because it's just so beautiful. And Yuki Kajiura, I will forever adore her. I love her. And I will listen like any anime that has they say like, oh, this is scored by Yuki Kajiura. I'm like, oh, like it's not a guarantee that I'll watch it, but it's definitely a mark in its favor. It definitely is like something in its favor. Definitely something that I'm like, well, I need to at least check this out now. People have criticized the animation in the show for being a little bit lazy, and while I can maybe kind of see it, I think it's pretty much up to the standards of pretty much any other anime at the time. Like this was a time when anime wasn't necessarily very like you didn't get necessarily a lot of budget for a lot of animes, and so especially for something like this, which was primarily meant like kind of as a tie-in for video games and for the franchise as a whole. So you're not going to get a lot of work or funding into this, but I still think it's fine. I don't think that there's anything particularly egregious. One thing I absolutely do love about the character designs and the animation in this is that the male clothing is often just as skimpy as the female clothing. And it's awesome and I love it. We need more of that in media in general, not just anime, but in general. Where are the skimpy male armors? Come on, guys. Come on, people. Where are my armored thongs? You've given them to the girls. Why must the guys go without here? And where is my bear, Rule 34? The guy is super hot. He is so sweet. Where is it? I demand it. I call bullshit on Rule 34 that there is not more stuff for Bear. Seriously, come on. And like, there are female characters whose armor is maybe a little bit skimpy. Mimiru's armor is a bit skimpy, but there are also characters that are pretty covered up and are pretty conservatively dressed. And it is all just kind of around the personalization and the customization that you can do in the world. The dub is actually also really good for this anime, and I actually prefer the dub over the sub because I find that like the voices I find kind of mesh a bit more. And maybe that's because I experienced the dub first over the sub, but I also kind of feel like the voices kind of suit the characters more. I think particularly around Tsukasa, because Tsukasa, there's something about Tsukasa. I'm not going to give it away, but you guys are really going to be, I think, very, very happy, especially lesbians, trans people. You may want to watch this anime because Tsukasa, there's a little bit of a secret about Tsukasa that I think you're really, really going to like. It's not necessarily like made like a really big secret in the anime, but I think that you're really going to enjoy it. So, but I find that Tsukasa's voice works much better in the dub than the sub in that regard. And if you find out what that secret is and you watch the two of them, I think you may find out what exactly that is. But overall, I think the sub is really, really great. And I think it even has like some characters some people who you may have heard in other series as well, who are very much beloved by the community. All of that, like I said, like all of that is really kind of secondary for me. Like I love a good soundtrack as much as anyone else, but for me it's really all about the plot and about kind of the characters and kind of what it has to say. And as I maybe said already, the anime's plot is really kind of about like yeah, it's about the key of the Twilight and about the mystery of why the hell Tsukasa is trapped in the game and how the hell do you get him out. But really, the heart of the anime is the characters. This is an incredibly character-driven show, and really, I've actually heard it more kind of described as like a character study. You spend a lot of time with these characters, you kind of sit down with them, and you kind of just kind of listen to them, and you kind of hear about what they think about certain things, and kind of how they each react to what's going on, because like you're playing a game, you don't expect something like this. You don't expect something that that may may even have repercussions for the internet as a whole going on in a game like this. And it really kind of explores how they play the game, why they play the game, and how that affects how each of them react with Tsukasa. And and each of them kind of plays the game for very, very different reasons. Mimiru kind of plays the game because it's fun, and maybe she kind of craves adventure. Maybe she kind of wants to be like the characters in the TV shows that she watches and stuff. Bear, he plays the game to help people and to maybe kind of get that paternal fulfillment that he's not able to get anymore IRL in the real world. Subaru plays the game to be able to do things that she can no longer do in the real world, and to kind of have a sense that she's actually doing something good, that she's actually able to make a difference in the world. BT plays the game to connect people and kind of escape a life that she kind of finds stifling. And, Krim plays the game to kind of take a break from the seriousness and responsibility of the job that he has. And, and is very, very kind of firm, at least in the beginning anyway, of keeping the game world and the real world very, very separated. And, Sora plays the game to kind of be naughty, to kind of be able to do the things that he wouldn't normally be allowed to do in the real world, and to kind of play the bastard a bit. And Tsukasa plays the game to be able to escape from really, really terrible circumstances, and to become literally anyone else than who they are right now, and to just kind of forget that they even really exist in the first place, to forget everything that's going on, and to just escape, to just have kind of one means of escape from this world. And, maybe that's kind of ironic, the fact that they do get trapped there in the world, their escape becoming their prison. But the show is really about each of these characters interacting with each other and growing as a result of it, because the show is very slow, like it moves very slowly. It kind of lets you get accustomed to the circumstances. That doesn't mean that it's boring. I didn't find it boring. Certainly I didn't at all, because it introduces the mystery and it introduces the character dynamics very early on. And the fun really of the show is that it lets you get to know each of these characters. It lets you get to know them personally and see how they respond to the circumstances unfolding around them, and how they also respond to each other as well, and how everything affects them and their relationships within the world. Each character forms friendships, forms alliances, forms rivalries, forms relationships even, but also has the ability to surprise you and turn out not how you thought they were. And it gives them a chance for some characters to come around and to maybe turn around the way that they were doing things. The show really explores, I feel, how human relationships play out in a virtual space, how they are similar to relationships that we have in the real world, how they form into relationships in the real world, but also how they differ, and how the two worlds so often bleed into one another, for better and for worse. The show, I think, really kind of predicted our modern internet age, because back when this anime was produced, the internet still wasn't necessarily, the monolith that it is in the world today, where, back then, MMORPGs were kind of new. They were kind of the new thing. They were the new hit craze that was going on. Nowadays, they're such a foundational bedrock of kind of internet culture. And, we're now living in a world where the internet has just become so ubiquitous, and where so many people, for better or for worse, have now turned to the internet as their main means of interacting with each other and connecting with other people and looking out at the world. And I know certainly that's very similar to my own experience. I would say that that's how it is for my relationships. Most of my interactions come from online and on the internet. Most of my relationships, form online, or at least, those who even formed, I formed IRL, that's how you communicate with them. That's how we keep in touch with each other. But it's also how a lot of relationships form. I know a lot of my relationships have formed online, and it's really kind of allowed me to reach out to people, whereas I wouldn't, really wouldn't necessarily have been able to do that otherwise. And, it looks at all the ways in which that's great. Like, I mean, to be able to connect with people instantaneously and not have to be in the same place, like, that is so great for so many different people. And, and that's even approached in the anime itself, how some people can't go out into the world and you aren't free to move around like they are online, and about the freedoms that the online world gives us. But it also talks about the ways in which that's bad, in which the ways that these things can also hurt us. And ultimately, it says that it's always important to be able to turn off that game and to be able to see the real world, to never lose touch of who you are in the real world, which is kind of a rarity in gaming animes nowadays, where quite a number of them completely reject the idea of returning to the real world altogether. This is an anime that says, like, look, like, the internet is great, but it shouldn't be a substitute for the real world. It should be more of an augmentation of the real world, not rather a substitute for it. And it's also really interesting too to see Tsukasa's growth as well, because Tsukasa kind of starts off as not an entirely nice person. Sometimes Tsukasa is a little bit abrupt. Sometimes he has a tendency to push people away. And he even winds up doing some things that really are kind of awful and terrible, and which later he really comes to regret. And even to a certain extent, kind of wants to be trapped in the game and really doesn't want to be saved, at least initially. But he's also humanized as well and shown that, like, hey, this doesn't come out of nowhere. He's not just a jerk for no reason. The reason why he is the way he is because of the things he's gone through in the real world, or at least his player has gone through in the real world, and which are kind of the same thing, I guess. That this comes from a genuine place of hurt, that Tsukasa has been hurt, that Tsukasa has not had an easy life. And as a result of this, and this is why he seeks kind of this escape and why he acts the way he does, but that he ultimately is able to grow out of these behaviors and move past everything that has happened to him because of the people who he's interacted with, because he has formed this kind of family, really, online. And kind of these people make him believe in the world again and make him say, like, okay, like, I actually do want to go back out into the world again, if only so that I can meet you guys, if only so that I can see you guys in the real world again and meet you guys in the flesh. And like the show just really lets these characters evolve and become better as a result of their relationships with one another. But that's also not to say that the mystery of it as well isn't also interesting as well. Like for me, the characters I think really are the main kind of draw of the show. So if you like stories that are very character driven, which I do, you're absolutely going to adore this anime to death. But that's not also to say that the mystery also really isn't interesting as well. This kind of unraveling of, I love kind of that idea of that there is kind of a legend within the world that's not explicitly written into the world, but that just kind of has moved through player to player, and it's kind of one that has kind of organically grown. I guess maybe there are some stories like that, like like the hidden levels, or the characters that didn't make it into the game, but that you can still, like, through digging and hacking into the game, you can kind of dig through the code and find, And again, that's something that this anime kind of predicted, I think, really. Humans will always create myths around anything that's important to them, and now, we kind of live in a world where a lot of predominant narratives are around video games, are from video games, and so, as a result, mythology around video games emerges. And, like, you kind of start to dig deeper, like, the world as itself, like, it really kind of, it starts off kind of as just a kind of banal game. Like, you kind of look at it and it's like, a lot of people just kind of walk around aimlessly, like, because having a game where you can do anything, like, it's kind of hard to decide where you want to go. But kind of as you start to, like, pick beneath the surface, you kind of start to see that there's a malice acting behind the world, that there are things going on in the world that are not good, that the world in a way is maybe kind of an illusion, and that there's something big going on in the world. And as they do that, the stakes kind of become higher and higher and higher. And like the stakes do get really high, like when you really kind of realize that, like, the world is basically almost all there is to the internet. Like, the world is based off of the only operating system that is immune to Pluto's kiss. The world is one of the only things that really the only places that people can interact with each other on the internet in this alternate world. And it's important to all of the characters because, like, this is the place where they met, and this is the place where some of them, it's the only way that they can actually interact with each other. And so if the world gets taken over and taken away from them, then they lose that forever. They lose each other and their relationships. And and Tsukasa could very well be stuck in the world forever. And this anime says that that's a bad thing. It's bad. We don't want, like, Tsukasa deserves to have a life outside the world like everyone else does. He doesn't deserve to have that taken away from him. And they all want to keep each other together. And like it all kind of works together in that regard, that I really feel like it has a good mystery, which I'm always really, really interested in. I always love a good mystery in a show and kind of seeing it slowly unravel and stuff. But I also love a good character study as well. A very good character-driven show. And some of my new favorite shows nowadays are the character-driven ones. The ones that are driven by the characters who you really come to just adore and love. And I think maybe this is where that came from. I also feel too, though, that the show also does a really good job of introducing the mystery very upfront. Like, it's only within the first couple episodes that they basically say, like, okay, this is Tsukasa. He can't log out of the world. He can do things that no other player can do. This is there's something weird going on. We need to figure out what it is. And it takes its time slowly unraveling it for you and stuff, but it also doesn't reveal all of it. As I've said, like, I feel like if you listen to the explanation I've given in the background of the show, then it really does make a lot more sense. And you really do, I feel, kind of love it more because all of the kind of little pieces kind of snap together and it all makes sense all of a sudden. So, but if there's one flaw I think that there is to Dot Hack Sign, I think it's that the show really does end very abruptly. Like, the show really literally does just, go like, and that's it. And it's done. And like the show is done and the plot is kind of left hanging because the show was really intended to be a tie-in for the Dot Hack video games, and that's where the plot continues. And it also continues in the other series, like Dot Hack Liminality, which is about kind of what goes on outside of the world in the real world, and it's kind of the reverse of Dot Hack Sign, and in Dot Hack Legend of the Twilight. And it also goes on in the mangas as well. There's loads of mangas about the Dot Hack series as well. And, especially with Dot Hack Legend of the Twilight, which kind of continues the story of Dot Hack Sign, but just with a different cast of characters. And it doesn't upset me too much because the progress that went on was still so good, and kind of I think you kind of got to the end with these characters. And you kind of got to the point where they really couldn't necessarily do anything more than they've already done. And you kind of let it go on to another cast of characters to finish up the story. But while it doesn't upset me too much, it kind of was a little bit anticlimactic. And it was kind of sad. So I have not played the Dot Hack games. I would love to be able to get the chance to do so. I haven't necessarily heard glowing reviews of them or anything. Like, people say, like, they're all right, but like a 7 out of 10, but they're not amazing. So, but still, I'd like to play the games and see how they mesh with one of my favorite series ever. But so I think that kind of one of the last things I want to talk about with the review is about the other stuff, because of course, loving Sign so much and having it be now one of my favorite animes of all time, I wanted to love other things. I wanted to see, like, okay, like, what else has the Dot Hack franchise gone into? I've tried to watch some of them, but overall, unfortunately, I really haven't been able to get into a lot of them. I tried Liminality. It's really kind of like the reverse of Dot Hack Sign. Like, it really kind of looks at Dot Hack Sign from the outside. It takes place predominantly in the real world, with much of the game world being kind of very esoteric and not being really revealed. But overall, I found Liminality pretty boring, quite frankly. And I really just couldn't get into it. And there's Legend of the Twilight, which from my research isn't really necessarily canon, the anime anyway. It's much more canon in the manga and in the video games. But I also found that Legend of the Twilight was way too geared towards younger audiences. It's very chibi, kawaii kind of. And I've never really enjoyed that kind of stuff because I kind of feel like the adult man and the Toys R Us, you know what I mean? The adult in the toy store, and that's never a good. That's a feeling I don't really like. I'm gay. That's something that you, as a gay guy, you have that thrown at you enough. You have that implied enough. I don't need to have anything more to confirm it, So the only other really one that I gave a shot was really kind of, I think, the sequel and sort of the spiritual successor, which is Dot Hack Roots, because it seemed to be very, very similar to Dot Hack Sign. It really seemed to be trying to capture kind of what Dot Hack Sign was, And while it definitely was, I feel like it's a very hollow kind of thing. It didn't capture the heart of what made Dot Hack Sign so great. So for a little bit of background, Dot Hack Roots takes place in the year 2005 after the events of Dot Hack Sign, Liminality, Legend of the Twilight, and most of the Dot Hack franchise. What basically happens is that after a while, Aura, the AI born during the events of Dot Hack Sign, an AI who's very, very important in Dot Hack Sign, abandons the world that she is supposed to protect and leaves a hole in the network, causing all sorts of problems all across the internet. CC Corp, the corporation that runs the servers which house the world, therefore begins an experiment called Project GU and the RA plan, which is basically to try and fix the problem by creating a new ultimate AI to take her place. Project GU manages to salvage the data from the villain of Dot Hack Sign, isolate the different forms known as the Cursed Wave, and turn them into what are called the virus cores, which become a very important plot point in the Dot Hack GU games and in the anime. However, the experiment ultimately fails, leading to an explosion and a fire, which destroys most of the servers that the world's data is held on. But eventually, they're able to scrape up kind of whatever data they're able to salvage and use it as the foundation for a new game called the World R2, basically the World 2.0, which is eventually released to the public in 2014-2015. World R2 is much more kind of steampunky. It's much more kind of inspired by like steampunk fantasy and stuff like that. Like you have firearms, you have, kind of mechanics and stuff, but it's all very steampunky. It's much more maybe a bit urban fantasy, maybe kind of a bit kind of more grungy fantasy. But the problem also too is that the servers aren't as strictly policed as they were with Sign, with a lack of people like the Crimson Knights to keep things going. And so you get a lot of things like PKers and cheats and stuff like that in the game. And the main kind of plot of the show is that you have the main character's name is Haseo. Now, I think that a lot of the characters in Roots are kind of supposed to be foils of, sort of supposed to be like inspired by Dot Hack Sign characters, but the problem is that I don't feel like they have the depth that a lot of the characters do. They're basic archetypes, really, and they never really delve into anything deeper. Like, the main character, Haseo, is supposed to be like Tsukasa, the cold loner who pushes people away. But the thing about Tsukasa is that they give him humanity, and that's kind of why I want to talk about Roots, is because I feel like Roots, I think, is a good way of looking at the ways in which Sign succeeds by looking at the ways in which Roots fails. Like Haseo, he's the cold loner who pushes people away, but Tsukasa has a reason why he does that. Tsukasa has a backstory. It's understood why Tsukasa does what he does and why he acts the way he does. And he has justification for it. Like, you understand where Tsukasa is coming from. And Tsukasa also evolves and changes. But Haseo doesn't. Haseo is just an ass just because he just kind of looks down on everyone. He just kind of thinks that everyone is just stupid. And like he spends literally like most of the series asking, why the hell are people playing this game? Like, why do people play this game? And eventually it gets to a point where I'm like, why are you even playing this game, Haseo? Why are you still playing it? It's obvious that you hate it. You don't like it. You push it in our face constantly how stupid you think the game is. How frustrated you feel with it. Why the fuck do you even play it? Why are you playing it? He just stays there just so that he can lord it over everyone else, and just because he needs a reason to be upset and because he needs a reason to be an ass, like that's how he comes off. Maybe that's not how he is, but that's how he definitely comes off to me. He's just frustrating, and I hate him. And then there's, Shino, who's kind of supposed to be the bear of the group. She's kind of the kind, warm, loving, kind of the person who holds the group together. But whereas Bear, he had a personality of his own. Like Bear, like he likes a lot of very esoteric philosophers. He's read a lot of books. He's very well read. And he's read a lot of very esoteric stuff. And he tends to quote it. And people don't tend to know what the fuck he's talking about. Which is very endearing. But like Shino, like she has no life other than just being such an utter saint who just is so sickeningly loyal and sickeningly sweet. And like, I am fine with characters who are uber nice. But the thing is, like, she has no goal of her own. She exists only in relation to everyone else. She has no inner motivations of her own. She exists only when she is interacting really with other people. And like she is just such an utter saint who just takes everything that who just believes the best in everyone. Like even Hiseo, when he treats her like crap, she just smiles and just takes it. And like it's just, ugh. And she just like it's obvious that she only really exists just to provide tension later when she becomes the focus. She basically is fridged, basically. Spoiler alert. Shino basically becomes fridged at a certain point. And she exists literally to just be character development for Hiseo, literally. She's a sexy lamp, essentially. And then you have like Tabby, who's kind of supposed to be Mimiru, but like whereas Mimiru was maybe a little bit klutzy, maybe a little bit scatterbrained, maybe she tended to jump in without thinking things through, maybe a little bit headstrong, maybe a little bit stubborn, but she was still a very well-rounded and maybe a very grounded character. She was maybe the most grounded character in the entire show. And she was also the very first one when something was wrong, when she felt like something was going wrong, or when she felt like something needed to be done, she was the very first one to point it out and speak up about it. And she actually really forms the main driving force behind the helping of Tsukasa. She's the one who connects with him. She's the one who seeks him out and who doesn't let him isolate himself. She's the one who says, no, I'm not going to leave you alone because I know that you need this right now. I know that you need someone to help you, even if you say you don't. And she's the one who wants to be Tsukasa's friend because she kind of, I think, intrinsically senses that Tsukasa is hurting deep down. She's the one who intrinsically senses that Tsukasa needs help. And she's the one who pushes everyone to go and help him. Whereas Tabby is basically just bad comic relief and bad fan service, with her massive bust, which is very uncomfortable because the fact is that she acts like she is fucking 11. And I have a very strong suspicion that the person who is playing her offline is like 11. So it is very, very uncomfortable. I have stopped watching animes for less. I have stopped watching animes for that exact reason. That's why I don't watch No Game No Life. I don't have any interest in looking up an 11-year-old skirt. I really, really don't. And like Ovan is kind of supposed to be like BT, aloof and independent and kind of always has things going on in the background. But like where BT, like she comes off as aloof and an ice queen and maybe kind of a bit of a bitch. But like it's eventually revealed the reason why she does that sort of thing is because she's actually a very vulnerable person. She's actually kind of really ashamed of the life she's built for herself. She's kind of really ashamed of the life she has, and she's actually very self-conscious about herself and very unsure of herself and kind of feels trapped in the life that she now has found herself in. And when she kind of opens up to the others and finds that they actually don't judge her for that, she comes around and she comes to become more of a part of a group after she finds out that, hey, I can actually be myself around these guys. I can actually, they can know the truth and they don't hate me and they don't look down on me for it. But like with Ovan, he basically is barely there. He just pops up occasionally just to remind us that he's there and to remind us that, oh yeah, Hiseo kind of is kind of like mystified with him. Because guess what, Hiseo, we all are fucking mystified because he doesn't ever tell us what's going on. He basically shows up just to tell us fuck all, to be all enigmatic and brooding and to be mysterious and to just drop these fucking hints that tell you absolutely fuck all about what's going on and about what the actual plan is, and kind of winds up becoming the villain of the show for it. And it's just, frustrating. You could tell I really became very frustrated with Roots because it tried to become Dot Hack Slime, but it just didn't work. And not only from the characters, but I also feel like they don't do the story very well. I feel like one of the things with Dot Hack Slime, yes, Slime is a slow series. It's a slow burn. It builds and it slowly goes along. And it's not a very dramatic series, and I understand that, but it still does enough to keep your interest. But Roots takes that and blows it up and is way too long. It literally takes 13 episodes, half the fucking series, for the actual plot to finally fucking come along. Now, spoiler alert for the plot of the show. I'll maybe put the timestamp in. I may not, because I really don't fucking care about Roots. But Shino is attacked by a character called Tri-Edge and winds up being put into a coma. And this serves as Hiseo's, character development to actually take a fucking interest in the actual game. Because, she was nice to him. She put up with his bullshit, and that's why he likes her. It's just, terrible. And, that's why he becomes the character that he eventually becomes. And like, this is the thing, too. It's like, I could see ways in which it could be good. I could see that this, like, it's not terrible. Like, yeah, it's bridging. But what they totally could have done is that what they should have done is they should have not had her basically be Hiseo's girlfriend, or basically be Hiseo's love interest. What they should have done is they should have had, because there's, in the beginning of the series, Hiseo starts up the game and is literally, very first thing that happens, he is PK'd by a bunch of people. And Ovan is the one who comes around and resurrects him. And that's why he's interested in Ovan. And that's why, supposedly, that serves as his hook for the game, is that he goes to Ovan and he talks to Ovan and stuff about, like, what Ovan wants to do and blah, 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 blah. What they should have done, though, is that they should have had Shino be the one who comes along and revives him, and have her kind of be his first connection to the world at large, and have her who brings him in to the plot, and then almost immediately, like, once Hiseo is just starting to get to know her and just starting to realize that he likes her, bam, have that have her then taken away, and then have that be the thing that has him go to Ovan and say, okay, like, I want a part of this. I want to find out more about the world. I want to follow you in your search for the key of the Twilight, because that's what Ovan is looking for. I want to follow you in your search for the key of the Twilight because I want to help Shino. Like, that's an actual fucking character development, And also, one of the other big things is the way that they portray Rora is wrong. Fucking wrong. Like, she just has this personality change out of nowhere. Basically, like, what happens is that Aura, like, she's the AI who's created at the end of .hack and everything, and she's basically kind of the goddess of the world, for those who didn't listen to the background that I gave. And she's basically kind of the anchor of the whole thing, but she basically just kind of ups and leaves at one point. Like, this world that people have literally risked their lives for you to get you here, defeated a fucking, like, omnipresent, omnipotent villain to save you and bring you to the point you are, and you just fucking leave. And she just fucking leaves, apparently, and just disappears from the world, and, like, basically becomes a villain, because the character who hurt Shino, Tri-Edge, is revealed to have been created by Aura to protect her, and to basically kind of keep any character from actually coming to her and finding her. And she's otherwise pretty much completely and utterly superfluous to the story at large. And again, like, I can see where it could have been good. What they should have done is that they should have had C Corp try to control Aura, try to capture her and control her. She escapes out into the internet at large, and this, of course, causes all the problems in the internet. And so then they have the RA plan, which produces a corrupted and fragmented AI to exist at the center of the world, who creates all of the problems and the flaws that exist in the world, and have them create the knights from, like, the corrupted data of these important characters from Sign and Legend of the Twilight to track down those who are trying to seek out the virus cores, because that's the one thing that could destroy them, and that, their corruption is the thing that's causing all the problems in the world, and have that be the story, and have them have to, go after this corrupted AI who's causing all of these problems. And, maybe also have, like, the villain, who's part of the virus cores now, trying maybe to use that as a way to try to bring all the virus cores together to come back out into the world again. And, like, can you tell that maybe people need to start hiring me to write shit? Because, but, like, I can see where Roots could have been good. I can see where the story could have been good. And, maybe the games are good. Maybe the GU games are good. I don't know. I would love a chance to play them. I would love to have, like, just, like, an open world RPG based on the world of Roots, because I think that the world of Roots is really interesting and stuff. But, like, overall, Roots it just comes off to me as like just a lazy cash-in, trying to mimic Sign and trying to capitalize on the popularity of Sign and try to kind of recapture that lightning in a bottle, but it's just not putting in the effort. It's taking just the signifiers of it, taking like, oh, slow burn, character driven, these are character archetypes, and just kind of filing them in and not actually putting in the effort and the resources to actually go where .hack Sign went, because .hack Sign put a lot of effort into building the mystery, building the characters and stuff like that. Like Roots is just for me just so hollow and empty and vacuous and frustrating because it had glimmers of goodness, but it just didn't have the fucking effort. It just didn't want to put the fucking effort in. And so, yeah, hopefully that all made sense. Hopefully. I'm sorry if it didn't, but that's just. I feel like through examining Roots, you get, I think, a better sense of what made Sign so good. And that's really how I felt. Like watching Roots, I felt like, wow, I appreciate Sign so much more now because Roots didn't have the things that made Sign good. And like sort of in conclusion, like I will definitely say that like Sign is not a show for everyone. It is a show that not everyone is going to like. It's a slow show. It's about characters, learning about them, watching them interact, and slowly reveal the mystery. And it's somewhat esoteric. And if that's not your jam, then you're not going to like it. You know, a lot of people don't like it, especially those who are fans of things like Sword Art Online, which is much more action focused because .xsign has almost no action in it. But like this is totally my jam. And I still feel it's a show that is like has a lot of heart and so much compassion and empathy. It's a show really that is about compassion. It's a show that's about so many different people from even different parts of the world coming together to help a person who is alone, who is hurting, who is trapped in a circumstance that they never asked for, never deserved, and that they can't free themselves from. It is a bunch of people brought together through a game by this mystery that they have come to see they have to solve, and by a person who they know they have to save. And and that's a circumstance that I still see play out so often. Like I see, a GoFundMe for someone trying to raise money to help another person escape abuse, or to bring two people who love each other together and to let them, have a life together. And like that's basically this. Like this is a story about a bunch of people coming together to help a person who needs help, who is brought together by a medium, by this, this game, by this medium, finding out that one of them needs help, and then saying like we gotta help, we gotta go and help them, we have to save them. And like it's something I think that is still so modern and so relevant to our modern internet age. And even though that this is a story that was made in the late 90s and early 2000s, it's something which I think really reflects the modern internet and how humanity interacts with it. It shows that the internet allows us to escape from our problems. It allows us that temporary diversion that, especially, in our day and age, that we so often need, and that some people have always needed a distraction from. It's something which allows us to be free, allows us to do things that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise, that allows us a freedom that we may not be afforded in the real world, and something that allows us to connect with each other, something that allows us to experience things that we never would have been able to experience otherwise. I know that that's a big part of the internet for me. I've come across so many different things that I find so fascinating that I never would have been exposed to otherwise. It's something that allows us to find adventure when we want it and to bring us all together. But it's also something that can also damage us and can also hurt us as well. And that also allows things that never would have been able to touch us before to come in and hurt us in ways that we can't even describe. And in the end, it's a show that also talks, I think, too, that the internet is in the end only a medium, and it's only ever a temporary escape, and that it's never really a substitute for the real world, and that in the end, the problems that you have, that like whatever baggage you carry with you in the real world is carried into the online world. You can't escape it there. You can maybe find the resources that you need to work through it. You can maybe also find things that add to that baggage, but that in the end, you carry that baggage with you whether you're online or not. And that in the end, really, the internet is what we make of it. And sometimes you need to take a stand. Sometimes you need to stand up and you need to say no, that this is going to be a good place, that this is going to be a positive experience, and that sometimes you have to make it a positive experience for people. Sometimes you can't trust the system to do it for you. And also, like, one word of caution as well, though, for people who are disabled, there is a character who is revealed to be disabled, and it's kind of stated, like, one of the explicit reasons why this person plays the game is to kind of escape from their disability in a way. And I know that a lot of disabled people really don't like those narratives. This character was not born with this disability, though. This was a disability that they got several years ago. They were in a car accident, I think. And so, like, they are now disabled as a result of that. So I think that that's a little bit different from people who are, like, who have been disabled their entire lives. And so, but yeah, but, like, if that sort of thing pisses you off, then, like, just be aware of that and just be, like, understanding of that going in, and, like, as fair warning. But, like, still, overall, like, this is a show about a group of people coming together to save a person who is in a really, really bad situation, who is now suffering, who has, been hurt so fundamentally in the past, who has been misused by basically everyone in their life, and who is now at the mercy of a system and of a force which none of them can really even comprehend, and none of them can really even fight head on, but they can only ever really fight indirectly, which they'll not even necessarily be able to defeat fully, but that they still have to fight because they're not going to let this person be alone, and because they know that this person needs their help, and that if they don't do it, then no one else is going to. And really, can you say that there's any other story that better reflects our modern times than something like that? Really? And so yeah, I think that kind of sums up my thoughts on .hack sign. Hopefully it made sense for you guys. Hopefully encourage you guys to go watch the show. I really hope you guys watch it and love it as much as I do. It is definitely one of my favorite animes of all time. I absolutely adore it. I think it's a wonderful show, and I want to see more like it. And I've seen some like it, but I want to see more of it. And I still think, like, even though it kind of, I think, is the progenitor, a lot of people have called it the progenitor of the kind of gaming anime, of video game anime. I still think that there are a lot of video game animes out there, though, that I think could take a note or two from .hack sign and learn a thing or two from it, I think. And I would really love to see more in the .hack universe that is more like this. It seems, though, unfortunately, that I'm going to have to wait until 2025 for the next game to come out. Game sounds cool, but I don't know if I'm going to want to wait till 2025 for it. But anyway, so hope you guys have enjoyed this review. My next video will again be out in about 2 weeks. People probably aren't going to like it. I think that there are probably going to be a lot of people online who are not going to like the next video a lot, but I think it's something that I think needs to be articulated, and I think a defense of someone who I really adore and who I think hasn't been defended enough. So it's an episode I think needs to be made. So hopefully it won't go down too poorly, and hopefully you guys will see where I'm coming from. But yeah, fair warning, the next one may be a little bit controversial. Hopefully you guys will like it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this one. Make sure to like my video. Every like helps. Every like lets me know that people are watching and that people are liking what I'm doing. Make sure to subscribe for future videos. Hit the notification if you want to find out right away, immediately, when I post a new video. You can follow me on Twitter at JJacobMarion. You can also follow the show's Twitter at SFRanceReviews. Please follow me on Twitter. I want more Twitter followers so badly. I keep losing Twitter followers. I'm like, no, please come back. I just want you to love me. So, but yeah, until next time, may the privilege be with you. Stay entitled, snowflakes.